Hey everyone, this is Jason from Alphatone Audio, and today we've got another video for those of you out there with pedal boards, and we're going to talk about DC power. Now, I've already talked a lot about audio cables so far, and what I mean is we've taken a lot of stuff like this and talk about how to turn it into stuff like this. But that's only half the equation, and you can spend a lot of time and money looking at your signal path from an audio perspective, but if you're not getting good power to your pedals, they're not going to sound like anything. So the only assumption here is that you're probably using something like this, using an actual, discrete kind of like power supply. And what you're probably using is, if you got one of those, is you probably got a big pack of cables with your power supply and you're just using those. And honestly, for most people, this is going to be just fine. I've been using these for years on my own board and I haven't run into any problems with them yet. There's only a couple problems you can run into with these. One is you just don't have enough of the particular type that you need. Like, for example, you just don't have enough of the 3.5 millimeter plugs or something like that, and you just need a couple extras. Second problem is they are too short, which means some of your pedals just can't get plugged in, or you just can't get your power supply in a position where everything is getting power with no problem. The other problem is that they are too long and they're creating clutter on your pedal board, and it's having trouble with just too much wire on your board, and you're not getting a clean look, and it's just too disorganized, or it's too hard to troubleshoot or whatever, and there's just too much. So if you want to change what you're using today, there's 3 different ways you can do it. The first one is you can always just buy more of what you have. If you just don't have enough, or you just want a couple spares, or you just happen to need like one more of a particular cable type, you can always go back to the original manufacturer that made the power supply, and chances are they sell them. Now, if they only sell the power supplies and you only get the kit with it and you just happen to need more, these are absolutely interchangeable. For example, if you bought the Voodoo Lab, or if you bought the Walrus Audio or the MXR or whatever, it doesn't really matter as long as you just get the right connector size, meaning like if it's a 2.1 or 2.5 or center negative or center positive or whatever. As long as you know for a fact that the specification is correct, there's nothing fancy about these cables. They're absolutely interchangeable. And you don't even really have to get them from the power supply manufacturers. You can always go on Amazon or DigiKey or Mouser or any of those kind of places and get these in individuals or bulks or whatever. I just find that the path of least resistance is to go back to the power supply manufacturer, because pretty much know exactly what you're going to get, which is what you already have. The second thing you can do is you can buy a kit. If you're a fan of the solderless stuff, there are 2 options out there that I know of. Lava Cable has a DC solution, and there's another company called 3 Monkeys, and they have a DC solution. I happen to have the Lava Cable stuff. I do not have the 3 Monkeys stuff, so I'll substitute with an image. The Lava Cable stuff was on sale, and the 3 Monkey stuff wasn't. It's just that simple. So I'm not going to do a real review of these anyway. I just want to point out a couple things that may be of interest to you, and just point out a couple interesting comparisons between these 2 systems. Both the Lava and 3 Monkeys, they come in multiple colors. Now, one of the things about both these systems is the cable that they use is identical to the audio cable, which means they don't have 2 different cable types, one for power, one for audio. On the Lava Cable, they just, because they have a lot of different cables, this is their standard solid core tightrope cable. And you can buy this in bulk as well. Now, the cool thing about it is, again, both companies, they also offer multiple colors of cable. Now, this is very handy because if you have a lot of cable on your board and you happen to be using the same cable for both your audio and your power, everything starts to look the same. It would be nice if you could run one color for all of your power, another color for all of your audio, just to make it a little bit more organized, a little bit easier to troubleshoot. So Lava comes in 4 colors, and 3 Monkeys offers 3 colors. So if you want to get a little color coding, that's a really good option for just keeping things organized. The Lava Cable stuff, they have plastic barrels on their plugs, and whereas the 3 Monkeys are all metal. Now, the interesting point about the 3 Monkeys stuff is when you buy their kits, they also give you a small piece of heat shrink that goes along with the plug that you put over this barrel part. And the reason being is if the barrel of the power system happens to touch the chassis of an audio plug, depending on how your pedal is wired, it could actually cause some problems, because you're actually going to start to mix your audio and your power. So they give you the heat shrink to put on the outside of the barrel to isolate it from other plugs, either audio or power. Not a big deal, this is something that they do. Now the orientation on the plugs, the lava cable wants to default to being a right angle plug, and the Three Monkeys wants to default to being a straight plug. With the Three Monkeys, you're definitely stuck with a straight plug. However, because on the lava cable, because these outer barrels are plastic, I would have no problem actually just drilling a hole in the bottom, running the cable straight in, and then putting a piece of heat shrink over here just to cover the hole. And if that's something you wanted to do, you could certainly do that. I don't really see a problem with doing it. Now, the real deal behind these kits, while they are certainly convenient and they are both solderless, there is a price associated with these. The lava cable, for a kit of about 10 feet of cable and 10 plugs, which means you can make 5 cables total, runs you about $60. You can do the individual plugs, which are $5 a plug, and again, you would need 2 of these for 1 cable, and the cable runs 2 foot per cable, or sorry, $2 per foot, which you can buy in bulk. If you want to buy 100 feet of this, you could. On the Three Monkeys stuff, it's not their cheapest kit, but the equivalent kit to lava cable, which means you're getting 10 feet of cable and 10 plugs, runs you about $80. The individual plugs are $650, and 1 foot of their cable is $250. And it looks like they only sell it in 1 foot increments, which is not quite as flexible as the lava cable stuff. So is it expensive? I think so. Is it worth it? I don't know. I mean, it isn't to me, but if it is to you, then you can certainly make that investment. I wouldn't dissuade you from doing it. I mean, you know what you need better than I know what you need. But for me, it's a little bit pricier. And the next thing we're going to talk about is a slightly cheaper option. What we have here is a collection of parts that I got from the Voodoo Labs website. If you go to the site, which they're a little bit hidden, if you go to products, go down to accessories, you'll see power cables. Click on power cables, and from there scroll all the way down to the bottom where you'll see a section called cable parts, and then click on the make your own cable link. Okay, that's going to take you to a page where you can get these. They have 9 products and they have 1 of each of them. So the first one is they have these power cables. These are 3 feet long, 36 inches, and they come in 3 varieties. There's the 2.1 millimeter, the 2.5 millimeter, and the right angle 2.1 millimeter. So 2.1, 2.5, and 2.1. And terminate on one side, and it is bare wire on the other. And you could either terminate these as they are, or of course you could just cut these down to any length that you wanted, restrip and then terminate however you want. What you terminate this with are these over here. And again, they have the 2.1 millimeter in straight and right angle, 2.5 millimeter in straight and right angle, and 3.5 millimeter plugs in straight and right angle. Now, this is a soldering project, so if you don't want to solder, then you have to either just go with the pre-manufactured cables or go with one of the solderless kits we just talked about. If you wanted to do this as a first soldering project, it's not terribly difficult. However, these are not as easy as doing a standard 1/4-inch audio jack, because this is actually a fairly small part and you have to be pretty precise when you prep your wire to go in there. And secondly, this is definitely something where you don't want to make a mistake and create a short between your positive and your ground on this, because basically creating a 0 ohm load and presenting that to your power supply is not a great thing. So if you're not particularly experienced with soldering, I don't know if this is the best first project. It's not rocket science, but I always encourage people to try to do things themselves. But just be careful and take your time if you want to do that. So these are pretty simple. They just put together like any other audio cable. Just feed it through, solder it on, crimp it down, screw on the cover, and that's all there is to it. These straight connectors I think are fine. These right angle connectors, I'm actually not entirely sure I would recommend these. They're pretty janky. How you actually just break these apart, and then you would solder your cable on there and then put it back together. I mean, you just kind of like smash it back together. And it's, yeah. I mean, and it clicks there and it's pretty solid. Like, I don't really think it's gonna fall off, but again, it's certainly not the most durable one I ever found. I mean, again, you can use them, but they're not great. This is a case where if I really wanted to do it myself, I'd probably head off to like Mouser or DigiKey and see if I could find a slightly more robust right angle connector and just like wade through the tens of thousands of parts I have there. But anyway, again, this is a good bridge if you wanted to get into the DIY stuff. This is a good start because again, you always know exactly what you're going to get with these. These have the same kind of molded types or molded terminations that you have on the cables that you already got with your power supply. And this stuff is cheap. These cables, only $3 a piece, and every single one of these plugs are only $2 a piece. Now, if you happen to need something that's longer than 3 feet, or you just want a little bit more flexibility, like in a bulk cable, because at the end of the day, if you did a lot of these, there's a certain amount of waste that you're just cutting off these, you're not going to be able to reuse. With bulk cable, you get a lot less because you're always just cutting off what you need. What you could do, and what it looks like a lot of people on the forums use, is this is Mogami 2528 cable, and it's just a standard unbalanced audio cable, and it's actually, I don't want to say stereo, but there's 2 individual cables on here, and it's like a zip cable, and it's meant to just be broken apart. So this is like, you know, for a stereo pair or something like that, and it's just joined on the cover here. 25 gauge, which is enough for something like this. This runs price-wise 74 cents a foot, but because you're actually getting 2 discrete cables on this, you could look at it as only being 37 cents a foot. And again, if you needed to do tons of these cables, you could buy as many or as little of this cable as you wanted. Like I said, I'm talking about this one just because, you know, just looking on a bunch of various forums, this one seemed to come up over and over again, and the people are specifically using it for power cable. How this ended up being the choice that people use, I don't know. But if you're going to follow suit, not only with the 3 Monkeys and the lava cable, where they're using the same cable for both audio and power, and a lot of people are using this for power, then technically you could follow that train of thought and say, well, you could use any audio cable for your power. The only caveat I would put on that is I wouldn't go anything smaller than like 25 gauge. And again, if you think of these as like an extension cord, you're not going to use that super small like 16 or 20 gauge like lamp style extension cord to power, say, like a welder or your table saw or something that's going to draw a lot of power. If you follow the standard American wire gauges all the way down, all of these cables do have a certain capacity to the maximum amperage that you want to run through them. Now again, we're talking about very small amounts of amperage, but if you actually went out and got like the cheapest, smallest cable you could get, and you're trying to power like a really high powered pedal, like, you know, 300 milliamps, 400 milliamps, that range, like the big Strymon pedals or something like that, I mean, you just don't want to kind of put any kind of too much resistance in front of your power supply or get that pedal powered up. There's 3 options for you. One, of course, always just go back, get more of what you already had. Again, these things are fine. If they work for you, great. If you want the flexibility of the solderless stuff, I mean, both these kits look pretty good. They're certainly like low barrier to entry as far as the skill and time that you need to get them up and running. A little expensive for me though. And of course, you just have the ultimate flexibility if you want. Just go buy bulk plugs, bulk cable, and just do everything yourself. So, hope this is helpful for you, maybe give you some ideas on how you could optimize the power on your rig, and I'll see you next time.